Thanks so much, Jamel. We are now going to hear from each of the demo tables in the back of the room. If I could ask our teams, Deloitte, Mission Graph, Deloitte, Blockchain, GDIT, and HHS Accelerate to join me on stage, please. And each team will have 5 minutes to tell us what they are showcasing today.
Dave Bennigan with GDIT.
Fantastic. I think, do you have a slide? Yeah? Awesome. And then here's the, yeah, awesome.
Should I wait for the rest of them, or how did you want to say?
Let's see.
Just call them up one at a time.
Yeah, I think we'll call everybody up one at a time. Yeah.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about our and GDIT in particular. My name is Dave Vennegrud. I am the director of our data and analytics practice and our community of interest, as well as our center of excellence. So I wear a few hats, but it's all about data and analytics. Specifically on data science and machine learning is our emerging tech focus, and what I'm going to focus in on here today. You've heard a lot of good discussions on your panel, as well as Mark talking about the JAIC, about some of the activities or some of the technical areas in AI. And I just wanted to remind us all that artificial intelligence surrounds us, and as consumers, we probably used it 4 or 5 times today, maybe knowingly, maybe unknowingly. But our federal government and our federal clients are just beginning to adopt these solutions and realizing the benefits of the innovation and optimization they provide. I don't know about you, but I still want one of those robot dogs that can take himself out for a walk. You know, we were asked to talk about our demo booth and some of the federal missions we support. I've put a pretty big list here of the applications of artificial intelligence that GDIT has been doing and is doing now, and we can talk about in the back. It's pretty broad, and we've got a 20-year history, at least 20 years. We started with Mantis, an anti-money laundering solution, which we developed using AI techniques. We have a natural language capability called NetOwl, which extracts entities and events from text, helping create structured information out of text. And then we apply AI and machine learning tools across all of these spaces. I'll just dig into one right now, just to give you a sense of what we're excited about. I'll go back one, yes. Deep learning is a new kind of machine learning based on stacking neural networks and other components. And we're finding that pre-trained networks in the area of vision, image recognition can be used for a variety of purposes. And we're building classifiers to identify targets from imagery collected from planes and satellites, as well as your own device. You can take a picture of an insect or an animal, and our classifier will tell you what it is. Using deep learning networks that were trained for one purpose, and we're using reinforcement learning to train it for another purpose. So very exciting there. We're right now trying to help the USPTO in doing prior art searches, not text searches, but image searches, which is a very difficult problem. I want to get off the stage in, how much time do I have left? 1 minute? Yes. 2 minutes, okay. I just want to give you another sense of where we're working today with AI and machine learning. I've called out our 20-year history on the left. I won't go through that again. But on the right, you can see predictive maintenance for force protection devices. We look at maintenance reports for these towers that contain microphones and sensors, heat sensors, motion sensors, and we can predict when they'll fail and help with the maintenance of these outposts that are in forward operating bases in various countries. The middle one is fraud detection. At CMS, we've been doing Medicare and Medicaid fraud detection for more than 20 years using AI and machine learning techniques, predominantly predictive analytics. But just recently, we've explored using deep learning again to build better classifiers. And then finally, on the far right, we're predicting where planes are going to fly based on flight path information around airports, and then use that information to figure out what the proper height is for a drone to operate, so drones are operated safely. So as you can see, we are a systems integrator, 1,000 data professionals, 600 data scientists, 300 trained, 300 citizen data scientists who don't have the background but have the tools and the capability. And if I could leave one message, I'm going to say, when you hear about AI and the shortage of talent, think of the citizen data scientists and tools that can help them perform as data scientists. And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next up, we have HHS Accelerate, Michael McFarland. I think we have a video. Do we? Yes.
So, hi, Michael McFarland. I'm with HHS. We have got a blockchain-based acquisition system. We got our ATO late last year. We have now been with that, using it to ingest live acquisition data from the other acquisition systems, which we're still in the process of doing. And we're building out a number of acquisition capabilities around that. I have a video, which I guess I just hit play here.
Today, we're going to give you an inside look at what Accelerate is. What we believe Accelerate is the future of acquisition in public procurement, not only the U.S. federal government, but around the world. Today, we're going to show you how HHS Accelerate lessens the burden on industry partners, how it enables program officials across the department with the information that they need to do their job, and how it empowers contracting professionals to negotiate at the point of purchase so that they can achieve an outcome for the American taxpayer and for the mission that they're supporting.
Accelerate is a one-stop shop for all your procurement activities. It is designed to empower you, the acquisition professional, and improve the quality of engagement with industry. Accelerate pre-populates vendor profiles with information from outside sources, such as SAM.gov. Vendors can also enhance their profile by adding their core capabilities, experience, thought leadership, differentiators, and partnerships. Vendors can also upload their catalog, providing acquisition professionals with access to view the products and services they sell. Pre-solicitation notices, such as RFIs, can be created and posted within Accelerate. Vendors can view notices in real time and reply directly to the requester.
The key to Accelerate is the trust and the transparency into the data that is shared across OPTIVs and SAPTIVs within HSS. The data will be standardized, consistent, accurate, and reliable because that's what blockchain gives us, a shared data set with no one central owner.
Accelerate leverages vendor profile data and past HHS contract data to assist acquisition professionals in completing market research in record time, utilizing search filters that target your need with pointed accuracy. Accelerate compares prices and terms and conditions for like items using data from past HHS contracts, providing insight that empowers the acquisition professional to make better buying decisions. Acquisition teams can compare prices between different business types, locations, and operating divisions, and view past contract terms and conditions to understand procurement best practices.
Having price analysis at your fingertips to help you make better purchasing decisions on behalf of the government, as well as visibility into the status of procurement actions, is a game changer for the contracting officer.
Complete a guided questionnaire that will assist you in drafting your acquisition plan with unprecedented speed and efficiency. From the questionnaire, the system assists in completing your acquisition template and provides historical reference content. Accelerate encourages collaboration and allows you to add parties to assist in developing your requirement. Overcome the blank page when drafting your requirement utilizing historical content provided by Accelerate. As the contracting professional, accept the final changes of the acquisition plan and begin drafting your solicitation.
A wonderful thing about Accelerate is that for the first time, it provides the acquisition professional across HHS with automation, for example, to help them select the proper forms and FAR clauses so they can build their acquisition packages.
Empowered by artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities, Accelerate reviews the content within the acquisition plan and selects your form and applicable clauses. Preview your population populated form and solicitation at any point. Review the selected clauses identified by Accelerate as well as their descriptions. This percentage serves as a confidence score defined by the relationship between your solicitation and the FAR.
Thank you to Secretary Azar and Deputy Secretary Hargan for their leadership in creating Reimagine HHS. It's truly given us a window and the ability to actually create change across the department. This would not be possible without open and clear communication with our industry partners. We've learned a lot from our industry partners. We appreciate the dialogue with our industry partners. We appreciate the feedback that you've given us, and this would not be possible without you taking the time.
So I'm told my time is up.
Thanks, Michael. Next up, we have Deloitte Mission Graph.
Hello, everyone. My name is Annie Babcock. I'm one of the co-founders of Mission Graph, a homegrown solution built by Deloitte to empower massive scale analysis. And before I go more into the solution itself, I'd like to start with a story. So about 3 years ago, a national security client came to us and said, our analysts, in order to work on these cases, our analysts are having to go to IT and say, what's everything you know about this person or this company? And they work with IT queries all of our siloed databases, compiles all the data, sends it to the analyst, and then the analyst has to make sense of it. And then, once the analyst has done something with it, they might have found a gap, they might have found something really interesting they want to look more into. They have to go back to IT and go through the whole process again. It's taking a lot of time, and there's got to be a better way. And so they asked, what can you do? So we got together a group of diverse backgrounds of architects, data scientists, industry SMEs, and alliance partners to build out this platform, this integrated solution platform to empower those analysts to be able to explore and analyze a already integrated data set so that they don't have to go back and forth with IT. And when we gave our first demo to the analysts, one of them raised their hand and shared, you know, last week we had this particularly difficult case, and it literally took us 5 days to crack it. And what took us 5 days, you literally did in 5 clicks. And so you can imagine, Mission Graph was born. And our leaders in the firm decided that this problem, as many of you probably maybe experience a similar problem, and if it's not within your own agency or enterprise, it could be because you want to start incorporating external data sources or commercial data that's not quite playing nice with your own. And so in this world of ever-expanding data and ever-evolving technology, we've developed a platform to be able for you to focus in on your entities and the context around them. So when I say that, thinking about your customer or your patient and being able to build better recommendations, or understanding the personnel and the equipment in our armed forces and their state of readiness. Or being able to, and there's been a handful of people talking about this today, being able to identify fraud or other bad actors by exploiting those network rings. And so Mission Graph expands the human potential by integrating and optimizing organizational data in a single platform. And it's all backed by the experience and custom touch of Deloitte. And so there's 3 main components of this, as you guys can imagine. It's the integration of the data, the analysis of the data, and the visualization of the data. None are really crazy aspects for you guys. And so beginning with the integration. And if I call back that 5 days to 5 clicks, this is one of the biggest impacts that you'll immediately see. So integrating the data is really important, and you want to be integrating on your entity level. And so that means that you're taking the people, the companies, the doctors, the hospitals, and finding everything you know across those data sets. And when you store it in the data store, when Mission Graph stores it in a connected manner. So now when you search for that person or that customer, you're pulling up that complete profile and any context around it. And this is also a really great opportunity to start incorporating AI. We do that in our pipeline, start adding machine learning in order to optimize your matching algorithms across data sets for those entities. And then we go into analyze. And if any of you guys have done analysis, which I'm sure many of you have, you know that you don't actually get to the fun analysis part for a really long time until you've prepped your data. And in fact, a New York Times study shared that it takes about 50 to 80% using traditional methods for a data scientist to clean and prepare their data before they can even start an analysis. So imagine if your data scientists and analysts were actually only doing that for 5 or 10% of the time, or maybe not even at all. They'd be able to address more cases, have time to explore new data sets that would even further enhance your data and your analysis. They could be testing, deploying, scaling models, including things like optimizing recommendation engines, being able to identify different types of fraud rings, and enhancing risk profiles. And finally, seeing the whole picture, so the visualization component. It's one thing to be able to do the analysis to find the answer, but it's really important to be able to give those analysts, especially as was just spoken about, kind of the more civilian data scientists where they're analytical but maybe don't want to get too deep into the weeds. So what I'm showing here, and please stop by our booth to find out a little bit more and go deeper into the use case, but this is a workflow of an analyst at a targeting center, at a fusion center for a local law enforcement agency, and they're basically going through and getting context around before an officer goes and knocks on a door to issue a warrant on what we know about that person and that address in order to promote officer safety. Officers will approach a door very differently if they know that small children are behind it versus if they know that known gang members with violent arrests are behind it. And so I'm out of time, but I will leave you with that Mission Graph. With Mission Graph, we empower large enterprises to make sense of their messy, disparate data landscape, and with an open architecture platform that enables integration, analysis, and visualization of with real-time insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Last up, we have Andrea Laura with Deloitte Blockchain.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Laura. I am a product manager supporting our blockchain practice within government and public services. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to stop by our table in the corner yet, we have two things to demo and show to you guys that are pretty recent to our blockchain practice. The first of which I'll start with is our global blockchain survey that we recently published. So this kind of takes the whole crux of what this conference is about and looks at an emerging technology and different perspectives globally with large enterprises. So we had about 1,400 respondents around the world. So we're talking about 12 countries across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. And it's gathering research on what these enterprises' general sentiment on blockchain technology is. So what's interesting about the survey, among other things, is we actually conducted the same survey last year. So it's interesting to look at the year-over-year component and how some of these sentiments have changed over time. Another thing that we changed this year compared to last was we realized the importance of not only interviewing with enterprises, but also looking at a group of what we call emerging disruptors. And so not only looking at large businesses, but what are smaller companies that are specifically focused on blockchain technology? What are their thoughts, concerns, interests, and outlooks on blockchain? So those are a couple of just how our methodology worked. And feel free to stop by and ask some more questions about the survey and read some of the key findings there. Just to give a little teaser, we did break out our key findings into about 4 different areas. So for starters, we're noticing that blockchain is real globally. So it's been very exciting to see that there was about a 10-point increase in general outlook in terms of having blockchain be a priority area for these businesses. Second, use case maturation. So it's nice to be in a conference focused more on government and public services because not everyone's talking about crypto and financial services specifically, but in general, globally, the maturation of use cases is also breaking out of that financial services sector and really looking at how can this be applied to different sort of citizen services or supply chain or healthcare. So we just saw that really proliferating over the last year as well. Third, it's what we call taking blockchain from tourism to implementation. And so people are becoming less questioning about what is blockchain as a technology, but how can I apply it? So they're really taking their research and putting that in practice. And I think a lot of that pragmatism also has to do with the fact that there was and still remains a significant amount of hype around the technology. So for better or for worse, people are taking more of a responsible approach into really understanding what it means for them first before they're really investing and reacting. But we're seeing that slowly move towards that right side of implementation over the last several months. And finally, one constant between the last 2 years is the challenge with regulatory uncertainty. And while we talk about that a lot here, it is a global issue as well. So especially within the Emerging Disruptors respondents group, they specifically noted that their largest challenge right now is regulatory uncertainty. So those are just a couple of the tidbits from the survey that I wanted to share with you all. And the second piece that we also have as a demo today is a project. We have a live demo of a solution that we built with USAID over the last couple of months. This project was supporting the government of Georgia, so the country of Georgia, not down south, Georgia. And we have been working with USAID around a number of economic development initiatives. And interestingly enough, the government of Georgia has been pretty blockchain friendly. So as many of you have probably read about the land rights solution that Georgia put in place a couple years ago. It's actually in production. Citizens are using today, which is very exciting. So knowing that the government is looking to blockchain for a number of different uses and thinking of how to take that and really use it for economic empowerment and re-envisioning what a future power market could look like. So what we did was, in thinking of how to modernize a future power outlook, we created this web application focused on creating a day-ahead market using blockchain technology to empower that market. So feel free to stop by, and I'm happy to give you all a live demo. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have next the International Panel of Distinguished Ambassadors and Diplomats. I'm John Pilatich. I'm serving as government co-chair for the event today, and I'm in our Information and Communication Policy Office. I will now introduce my ambassador. I'd like to say a few words about Ambassador Robert L. Strayer, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Cyber and International Communication and Information Policy. In this capacity, he leads on the development of international cybersecurity, internet, data, and privacy policy. And he's been in countless negotiations with different governments on these issues. He's led dozens of bilateral and multilateral delegations to various dialogues as well as conferences. He was named by the President as ambassador and head of delegation to the 90-plus large U.S. delegation we had at the International Telecommunication and Unions Plenipotentiary Conference last October 2018. In that capacity, he also served as vice chair of the conference and was able to bring home quite a few successes for the U.S. when it comes to pro-innovation results for resolutions on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And now, folks, please join me in warmly welcoming Ambassador Strayer.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me at this event. I want to thank ACT and IAC for hosting this. I also want to thank the private sector folks who did all the work at putting this together, as well as John and Adam, who have been working a lot on this event today. As John mentioned, I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary at the State Department for Cyber and International Communications Policy. At the State Department, that means I lead the office that is in charge of ensuring that we have a comprehensive strategy to address both cybersecurity threats as well as the opportunities in the digital economy. Increasingly, we've seen that our economies benefit tremendously from the innovation that we've seen in the digital space. It's been roughly 30 years since the World Wide Web was created. In that time, we followed the model of having a set of practices that were based on letting the engineers, the private sector experts, the academics determine the path forward rather than having government set the path forward for technology. That's allowed all kinds of new innovation to occur. You know, when we had the old flip phones and we were texting on those, we never foresaw the opportunities that we were going to have through smartphones and then the apps that ride on those. And we're about now to turn the page to something entirely different with the Internet of Things that won't require humans to be in the middle. We'll have machine-to-machine communications through the sensors that are on the 5G networks that we will soon see in the future. As we address any of the challenges that we see in cyberspace, we need to do those consistent with our own values. It's important that we bring the types of tools that we bring to any other transnational or international challenge to bear that we now need to do in the digital space. Key among the tools that we use are the diplomatic tools and cooperation measures that we need to have with other governments. The internet itself, of course, is inherently transnational. Anything that we do in one country from a regulatory basis almost always will have an impact that's external that affects other countries. The same occurs with regard to cybersecurity. A threat actor in one part of the world can immediately have an impact across borders in a different part of the world. So we need inherently to have a coordination cooperation mechanism among governments. That's why this panel today is important to understand, to start to gain better understandings about how we're all facing slightly different challenges, but there's some real commonalities in the risks that we face. And it's also key that we think about how we're going to develop interoperable solutions across those borders, that we don't end up developing solutions to problems with regard to the internet that actually set up more barriers and cause a further fragmentation of the internet. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important that we think about how we do all of these tasks with our values in mind, with our values about rule of law, about human rights, about protecting individual liberties as we roll out new technologies. If I can just give one sort of case study to think about, it's the 5th generation of wireless technology. For about a year, we've been talking to governments and through their governments to the populations of people around the world about the importance of having security built into the 5th generation of wireless technology. But it's not just about the basic cybersecurity aspects, the technical aspects. It's really about thinking about what kind of vendor should be providing that kind of technology. What kind of vendor does one trust to ensure that the updates are made appropriately, that there's not a collusion between a government and its providers to undermine the rest of our security and other interests. We know there's great potential in 5G to basically supply be the underpinning for the future of critical infrastructure. It'll help supply electricity to us, water to our homes, to provide transportation networks and autonomous vehicles. All that will be supplied by 5G. That's what makes it so critical that we have 5G secured. When we look at who we consider, though, to be trusted partners, it would be countries that have similar values to ours. In China, we have a case of a country whose values are quite divergent from what, especially in recent years, with regard to data. We've seen the Chinese government use data to assign social credit scores to people, to imprison millions of Uyghur population based on their ethnicity and their religion. So we've seen a country that is seeking to use data in ways that we would not countenance in our liberal democracies, that is contrary to our values. That is not a country that we're going to be able to trust to be part of supplying the most important infrastructure to our societies in the future. Furthermore, when we talk about our values, there's companies like Huawei in China and the Chinese government who will approach governments in countries around the world and offer them 0% interest terms for 20 years. They offer them terms that are not in any sort of way, any even close to the mark of being a reasonable commercial venture. They're also offering these contracts to governments in non-transparent ways. We know of many cases of countries that have signed up for financing deals with China for their One Belt, One Road project or other areas where they have taken on huge debt burdens that are unsustainable. In some cases, that causes countries like Sri Lanka to have to give up their port as a collateral for future payments on a loan. In the end, they lose that port to China. So that kind of model of financing is not what anyone would consider in the West to be a appropriate financing mechanism. So we're talking to governments about the values and the types of financing that should underpin the future of infrastructure, and that would of course include telecommunications infrastructure and the 5th generation of wireless. Lastly, I know you probably talked a little bit earlier about artificial intelligence, but that's an area where we know that it needs to be built on fundamental human rights, protecting human rights, building that into the algorithms, building that into the systems themselves so that the public and governments can understand and that there is an explainability factor built into what AI does. That way we can ensure that there's not discriminatory aspects to it, that it's not being used in ways to deny people fundamental human rights. There are, of course, countries that are already using surveillance technologies, using machine learning in ways that are contrary to the values that we hold dear. So it's important that we speak up against those, that we work with other governments around the world to ensure that the values that we embrace are going to be key components of future technologies. The last thing I want to mention is that we don't need to fall into false dichotomies as we make decisions about future technologies. For example, we can avoid data localization. We can have both security about our data and not have it localized in specific locations and countries around the world. We can still let the best architecture of the cloud with best practices applied for cybersecurity allow data to be where it needs to be around the world in the most efficient manner possible. In fact, localizing data in many cases will cause it to be housed in locations where it's less secure and more likely to be intruded upon by cyber criminals or others. So we shouldn't think that the false dichotomies need to apply to many digital choices that we're going to make. There's thoughtful ways we can move forward, but that's what often needs to be based on working with industry. We want to see voluntary industry-led standards that are ways that we deal with the challenges that we face. Lastly, to say, regarding the challenges in the field of AI and others, it's so important that we really rely on what are tangible problems that we face and not just speculation about what problems could occur in the future. We should be reluctant to regulate because every time we regulate, we're stifling some path of innovation that would have otherwise gone forward. And of course, there's important public policy reasons that we need to address some issues, but if we work to add too much of a protective set of measures up front, we will stifle that innovation that's so important. We need to continue to see the investment, the competition that will lead to future innovation in ways that we cannot foresee today. So we're very fortunate to have this excellent panel coming forward with members of our diplomatic corps in Washington, including 3 ambassadors. So I invite them to come up here, and they're under the excellent co-chairmanship for the panel discussion with John and Kambiz. Unfortunately, I have to return to the White House for a meeting at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to leave right away. But thank you very much.
We'll get together soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
So it is my honor to welcome our panel of of ambassadors and distinguished diplomats. I would like to ask His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah Khalifa, the ambassador from the Kingdom of Bahrain, for the first presentation.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, ACT, IAC, for providing the diplomatic community this wonderful platform and the chance to share countless experiences in the digital age. Bahrain has a story to tell, and I'm proud to be here sharing it with everyone in attendance. Bahrain has been both vigilant and bullish when it comes to integrating itself with new and emerging technologies. In fact, one thing I'm certain about is that Bahrainis are not afraid to dip their toes in the water, so to speak.